Welcome back to more SOVL PvP. Today I am excited to showcase my first match in the SOVL Showdown tournament. Now this is the list that I've submitted for the tournament. If you want a bit more detailed on the list and you haven't done already, check out my last video where I talk about it and then showcase a few matches that I did in preparation for the tournament. But just as a brief recap, the list that we are running is the Goatmen Shaman with a unit of skirmishers and Hex of Ruin spell, another unit of skirmishers, the Mongrel Pack as my battle line choice, one chariot, and the Feral Giant with Boulder Throw. But with that said, let's check out who I am going to be facing off against today. So my first opponent for the tournament is going to be Nub the Scrub and his Greenskins Gobos list. Now, if you didn't know, these first games are forming part of the group stage. There are 4 players in each group, and then they all play each other, and then the top 2 go through. All of the lists were made public to everyone at the start of the tournament. So, I could scroll through and be like, can't beat any of these, but also gives us an opportunity to, start planning for the matchups. But what has Nub brought to the table? They are running the Goblin Shaman with Hex of Ruin. Expect to see a lot of that in this tournament. On a chariot, it's an interesting choice. I'll talk about that in a second. And then a kind of standard Goblin Horde with 2 mobs and 1 unit of short bows. And then some Wolf Riders with the short bows, probably just points left over because I don't think they're especially effective. And a giant. So yeah, I'm quite intimidated by this list because I guess the strength of goblins specifically is just the sheer number of units and sheer number of models that they can field. On paper, it's actually not that dissimilar to our list if you think about it. Both have a spellcaster with Hex of Ruin, both have 1 chariot, both have 1 giant, both have 3 infantry units. 2 of mine have ranged option versus the 1, but each of his units have more models in, and then in addition he also has points for the Wolf Riders. Now the kind of flip side of that is my individual units are slightly better. So for example, the stat line on my skirmishers is very similar to that of the short bows, but they get hand weapons, which give them +1 power on a charge and an additional defense. Similarly, the Mongrel Pack have really similar stat line to Goblin Mob, but +1 defense. And then across the board, most of my stuff is Discipline 6, whereas most of the Goblins are Discipline 5. So expect to see a lot of stuff running away. So given that a strength of the Greenskins is just the sheer number of screaming goblins they can throw at you, I think my general approach is going to be to try and avoid meeting him head on and encountering the full brunt of his force all in one go. I'm going to try to kind of take it out piecemeal. There's no unit I'm like especially scared of in terms of damage output, but I think the one I'm maybe most worried about is the giant, simply because you see with the Feral Giant in my own list like how difficult it can be to kill, and if this gets into any of my units, it's probably just going to stall and give the rest of his army an opportunity to kind of surround and overwhelm with their numbers. I really don't mind that the Shaman is on a chariot. I think having this kind of key piece with the Hex of Ruin, riding a model with such a low number of wounds, makes it quite susceptible to Hex of Ruin and then getting shot off sometimes as early as turn 1. But with that said, let's get into this first game of this best of 3 matchup. Okay, having just said I don't really want to meet my opponent head on and I want to try to take them out piecemeal, I want to deploy bunched up to one side of the battlefield, and I decided to deploy on the left side simply because I can deploy both the skirmisher units in the cover of the trees and with their scout ability ignoring the movement penalty for difficult terrain. There's really no reason not to do that. More out of force of habit against shooting heavy lists than anything. I deploy by a giant behind a kind of screening unit, although I'm not all too worried about the output from just the short bows here. And then put my chariot off to the side, so hopefully it can get around, cause some havoc, get into the flanks of my opponents. But let's take a look at how they have deployed. So potential downside, I suppose, of running a list with lots of units, lots of numbers, is you have a larger footprint, maybe a bit more spread out. And here I'm really happy to see the giant on this side of the battlefield, away from where I am. I think if this had been flipped and the giant could maybe get in and tie my units up, and then the rest of his units could come into bear and bring all of his numbers to bear on me all at once. And yeah, wisely my opponent deploys their commander's unit kind of where I'm not going to be in a position to shoot at it on turn 1. But let's get into it. I think in general my strategy seeing this for turn 1 is going to be a bit patient. I think I'm realizing here that I actually have range superiority for a change. It's pretty rare with this list. And also my opponent has that all-important final move. So I think all of that kind of means I want to be a little bit just sort of patient, maybe pick off what I can, maybe try and pick off these units before everything here on the right kind of get in. But let's see how this goes. Then moving the Wolf Riders around the side here kind of lends itself to that as well. So that's what I was thinking going in. And then I think I get to this point and I realise, why are these Goatmen running from a fight? Actually, as this stands, like, I kind of fancy myself here, kind of fancy Feral Giant into another unit. Why don't we crack on in? So yeah, the let's be patient plan lasted all of about 30 seconds. So we go charging in. And here, just want to mention the decision point when you go to list building of the size of your ranks and your files. So I've chosen to go as wide as possible. So here you see I have 2 ranks of 7. And if you don't know, only the first 2 ranks can contribute in combat. Flip side of that is any additional ranks, if it has at least 50%, can contribute or add a rank bonus for when doing discipline tests. So particularly for kind of low discipline units, I can understand why my opponent has gone more boxy here. Another, I think, maybe a bit overlooked or less obvious advantage of this sort of formation is just maneuverability. Yeah, that one.
Maneuverability
Means you can fit through tighter gaps. I think you probably spend less movement pivoting. But in this situation, I am really pleased. I've made the decision I have, because when this unit gets into what is now bigger unit of 15, I'm going to be attacking with all 14 models, as my opponent's going to be attacking with only 10 of theirs. And this kind of plays into what I mentioned in my last videos, is like how I think these goats should be played. They have pretty low discipline themselves, and every single unit in the list gets some sort of benefit from being on a charge. So I feel like they just want to get in and get that one really big attack on that first round, and they're not going to survive anyway if they get bogged down in a prolonged combat. All right, tangent over. Let's get into some combat. And I'm like, yeah, let's get in there. And now as he starts moving his units, I'm all of a sudden thinking, have I just walked straight into his trap? But it feels like the walls are now closing around. even if we win these combats, which we're expected to, all we'll have to show for it are probably two of my opponent's most disposable units. And now we're getting kind of collapsed upon. So it feels like my opponent maybe laid a bit of bait there and I've fallen for it. So they move their chariot around. I'm going to pop Hexaver in here. And I moved my chariot up here and I made a bit of a mistake because I thought I would be able to charge this chariot based on how the charge cone was looking at the time. I think the official reason why it ends up I couldn't is maybe that I am in my opponent's side arc, but I can only see the front arc. It looked like I could see a little bit of the side arc as well, but I don't know if it's because I can see more of the front. I'm not sure. For whatever reason, I moved this chariot here, expecting to be able to go into the flank here. But, you know, that's something I'm still learning exactly the nuances of the SOVL charge system. So, yeah, we'll see those charges in a second, but kind of as expected. Well, as expected, we win both these combats, but we do get quite fortunate because, as I said, my opponent did use one of their 2 Hex of Ruins on my giant, and I only took 1 wound from that round of combat. So, pretty happy with that there. As I say, not able to make this charge. My opponent elects to put both units into the giant rather than just have a little giant off and a commander off out down here. I think that's probably the right choice from them. And another Hex of Ruin on my giant kind of forces me to respond with my own on his commander's unit. This is going to be a pretty pivotal combat coming up, and really want to do as much damage as I can to his commander's unit or get lucky and win by combat score there. And I make a mistake here I just want to point out with the chariot. So I'm pretty sure I had plenty more movement available here, and I'm thinking about for if I get unlucky here and my skirmishers lose to these short bows, which they shouldn't, but if I get unlucky, I want to be outside of their front arc for the full the charge. I want to have the opportunity to chase down this unit if I am able to take out the chariot. Again, slim chance, but want that opportunity. But then mainly I want to be able to, my plan is to charge into the flank here. What I failed to think about and should have done is if my giant dies or runs, I'm right in the charging arc then of the giant. So I moved in a position thinking, I'd be clever factoring these 3 units, but neglected to factor in this 4th one here. I think we're expected to win over there, but failed to rout. I think they're definitely expected to win there, but they failed to rout us. And now for this important combat in the middle, I believe we match damage. We both put 3 wounds through each, but because of that flank charge, it forces a break test because we lost combat score. And man, this fearless giant, fearless with 8 discipline, I feel like it's just a given that I roll 9 or higher there. So I am not liking the position I am in now, but I oversaw this potential, but I was just in range to get a charge in here to prevent that. So I think initially he issued charges there and then with his commander's chariot onto the giant, and I was able to intercept before this unit was kind of blocking that. But obviously then now they've turned to face, that's opened up this charge here, which I spent a lot of time, I think, thinking about. I think that was one of these key decision points of the game, because I'm not confident that we can win this anytime soon anyway. I think we have one hex left, but with Discipline 9 on my opponent's giant and Fearless, yeah, I'm not confident there, but this frees up the chariot to just go hunting down these units, which we just want to like tidy up to get the points for, but also it's going to stop them turning and, you know, coming back into the battle. So I do decide to make this charge and charge in with my commander's unit there. Now, as expected, they do win the prolonged fight there. Still a bit of a stalemate here, but now we've got a situation where there are just, I think, this game's coming down to these two really pivotal combats. And if we take a look here, boy, do we get lucky with our attack. 6 of the 11 4-ups go through, but then my opponent only managed to save 1 of the 6 on a 3-up. So that's definitely a lucky roll there. And I had saved my remaining Hex of Ruin, kind of expecting that this would just be a stalemate, that we're not going to really be able to take out this giant. They only get 2 wounds back, but pass their break test. And then over here, I think my opponent is able to get 2 wounds through, but thankfully we passed this break test and are able to turn. And then we have the chariot with 2 wounds left versus the giant with 2 wounds left. And pretty sure that favours us, given the chariot has now not getting any of its bonuses to charge. Chariot's able to clean up those units in the north, and now the giant's only down to 3. I do pop that Hex of Ruin, emboldened, you might say. And again, in these pivotal combats, I believe we are able to get 2 more wounds through on the giant there, and only 2 there, so that's a tie. And then over here, my opponent's able to get 1 wound through, but I'm able to finish the job and destroy the chariot. And that is going to be all she wrote. Really kind of good game for my opponent. I think with only 1 wound left and everything else running, my opponent concedes, yeah, at this point. I think really well played, well executed from my opponent. I think really came down to a few key combats there and a couple of like very lucky rolls from my side. But yeah, that was game 1 of this match's best of 3. So let's move on to the next one. Okay, game 2 of this best of 3, and decided to change up how I deployed. I think it's one of the nice things about this being a best of 3. Maybe I wanted to, I don't know, throw my opponent off or something, but realizing now, yeah, I have range superiority. I kind of deploy a little bit further back this time, and then also then in the middle with my chariot just off to the side to kind of cause havoc. And now if you take a look at how my opponent deployed, I think they were expecting me to again deploy all bunched up on one side and kind of gambled to try and pick this one. I'm a bit worried about my chariot over here, but I suppose it's going to be a sort of similar thing, deal with what I can on this side and then not get too bogged down with like everything at once. I think, yeah, just taking pot shots at some goblins through lack of better targets. I believe once again my opponent had final movement, and I spent some time trying to get movement of this chariot to see, can I get it around here to charge there? Can I sneak it up here? Could I get it into the flank and like but still cover off it? And in the end, I decided exactly where it is better than anywhere else. I think it's not favoured in this kind of matchup, but at least it just sort of delays, holds this up for a turn, and also I'm covering off any potential flanks coming round. Well, I'm not covering off, but anyway, it means that what it does mean is I'm not putting myself in a position for it just to get flanked by his chariot, because yeah, probably more so than any other unit in the game, chariot wants to be on the charge. And now this here, I think this is one of those weird SOVL things everyone's still getting used to. My giant here is, as you can see, just in the woods, which means it can see through the woods and throw its boulder at my opponent's giant here. However, because I think the ruling is because my giant isn't fully in the woods, my opponent's giant is not able to see it for the purposes of charging. So it isn't able to kind of charge through the woods to get at it, if that makes sense. So a bit of a weird, funky rule. I don't know if that should be how it works, or it should be kind of, I think it would make more sense to be like either you're in the woods or you're not. If you are, I don't know, it's a bit asymmetrical. Either way, that favors us because we're able to yeet the boulder here without their ability to charge us. And my opponent was egging me on trying to get this kind of giant on giant battle going, but I was not falling for it. Okay, indeed, that charge happens, and then my opponent moves, yeah, their commander to this position. I assume to then counter there or head something off, and I'm not sure if they thought it was a bit more covered than it was, but this is going to prove, I think, pretty pivotal for this game because I am able to move up and round, pop the hex off, and get a full barrage of shooting, full complement from the giants, rock, and then the 2 units of skirmishers. Choosing from those 2 wasn't enough, but from the 3rd unit, that's more than enough to take out the commander. And not only that, my opponent had yet to use either Hex of Ruin, which is good, so important for chewing through units like this giant. So yeah, really happy there. Here as well, just as last game, I fancy myself here. Might sound weird if you're watching from America. It's a British saying. Anyway, and also I am able to move these guys just inside the sort of side flank there. So I'm going to get a double charge here. So I'm happy with what's going on here. Happy with what's going on here. Going to lose this. But with 2 Hex of Ruin, oh, well, 1 remaining Hex of Ruin in my pocket and 1 wound already taken off my opponent's giant, I'm fairly confident with this matchup here as well. So indeed, Hex of Ruin, and then another bit, this time a bit of misfortune, I think, from my opponent. This is a weird map where you have this bit of impassable terrain, this rock here next to the difficult terrain of the woods, which I think is fine and it should be, but then weirdly enough there's another rock right here and that's not impassable. So I think I guess I'm fine with this being impassable, but just as long as it's like consistent. Unfortunate for my opponent because it means just not able to get an arc onto my giant to get the charge in for this upcoming turn. So let's play this out as both units of goblin mobs run away. This is now really going to come down to my opponent, I think, getting lucky. They really need to rout this unit here, which they're not able to do, and then they really need good combat here against my feral giant, which now Hex of Ruin has worn off. They get the rear charge. I'm on 4 wounds to their 3 on the Giants, but then he's got the Wolf Riders as well. I'm not sure whether or not to pursue these. I think I decide to come around at least with this unit and then pivot around where this is still an option for this unit. But with this all-important combat, let's take a look through it. So we get 4 attacks through on my opponent, and they fail all 4-up saves. And I save the one that went through to me, and then the Wolves only get 2 more through. So not only did we wipe out my opponent's Giant in that combat, but the Wolves had to, Wolf Riders I should say, had to take a break test, and because they're Goblins, of course, they ran, and a good bit of fortune there for me. But again, that is pretty much going to be all she wrote for this one. So I think one really fortunate, or I don't know, positioning where I was able to snipe off my opponent's chariot there, and then again some kind of lucky rolls in combat, able to seal that one. So that is match 1 in the bag for the Goatmen. Really enjoyed those couple of games against a really lovely opponent. If you do want to follow more of the SOVL Showdown tournament, or even be in a position to sign up for future tournaments, head over to the official Discord. I'll leave a link in the description. And if you want to continue following this Goatman lists tirade through that tournament, stay tuned for the next video where we'll have a second matchup of the group stage. This is a relatively new channel, so please do like, comment, good or bad, subscribe, but do all that good stuff so that YouTube, knows to recommend it to others, and recommend it to others if you so fancy. Until next time, bye bye.